Welcome, Shadow Seekers, to American Shadows, Crimes and Chronicles. Today, we're unearthing a tale that'll haunt your thoughts long after it ends. Whether you're glued to the screen or just listening in, you're in for a wild ride through history's darkest corners. If you're new, hit subscribe to join our mission of exposing America's hidden truths. Regulars, your likes fuel our journey into the unknown. Now, let's peel back the layers of time and reveal the secrets beneath. Ready? Let's begin. Invisible Killer, the Anthrax attack that terrorized America after September 11th. Hello, friends, and welcome to American Shadows, Crimes and Chronicles. Today we're delving into a dark chapter of recent American history that sent shockwaves through a nation already reeling from tragedy. On October 5th, 2001, less than a month after the devastating 9/11 attacks, a new terror emerged. One invisible to the naked eye, but equally frightening. This is the story of the 2001 Anthrax attacks, a biological assault that would grip the country in fear and forever change how we view the mail. What transforms a routine day at a Florida newspaper into ground zero for a national crisis? How does a microscopic spore become a weapon of mass terror? And why, 2 decades later, does the specter of bioterrorism still haunt our collective psyche? Before we unravel this chilling tale, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you who support our work. Your engagement allows us to shed light on these pivotal moments that have shaped our nation in profound ways. We also want to take a moment to honor the victims of this tragic event. Robert Stevens, Thomas Morris Jr., Joseph Kursine, Kathy Nguyen, and Ottilie Lundgren. Our deepest sympathies go out to their families and all those affected by this senseless act of terror. The first casualty, a silent killer strikes. Our story begins in the quiet offices of American Media Inc. in Boca Raton, Florida. Here, amid the bustle of a busy tabloid publisher, 63-year-old photo editor Robert Stevens was going about his day, unaware that he was about to become the first casualty in America's first major bioterrorism attack. Picture, if you will, the scene on October 2nd, 2001. Stevens, a British-born Florida transplant known for his friendly demeanor and professional dedication, began to feel unwell. What started as flu-like symptoms quickly escalated into something far more sinister. By October 4th, Stevens was admitted to JFK Medical Center in Atlantis, Florida, his condition rapidly deteriorating. In the early hours of October 5th, the unthinkable happened. Dr. Larry Bush, an infectious disease specialist at JFK Medical Center, made a startling discovery. The rod-shaped bacteria he observed under the microscope were unmistakable. Bacillus anthracis, the causative agent of anthrax. This wasn't just a medical anomaly, it was a national security threat. At 4 p.m. on that same day, Robert Stevens succumbed to inhalation anthrax, becoming the first fatality in what would soon be revealed as a coordinated biological attack on the United States. The nation, still bandaging its wounds from September 11th, was thrust into a new nightmare. The announcement of Stevens' death sent immediate shockwaves through the country. How could this have happened? Was this another terrorist attack? The timing, less than a month after September 11th, seemed too coincidental to ignore. Fear and speculation ran rampant. As news of the death broke, local, state, and federal authorities descended on Boca Raton. The American Media Inc. building was evacuated and sealed off. Men in hazmat suits, looking like visitors from another planet, combed through the offices, testing surfaces and collecting samples. The sight of these figures, set against the backdrop of sunny Florida, created a surreal and terrifying spectacle that would be seared into the national consciousness. The investigation quickly revealed that Stevens wasn't the only victim. 2 of his co-workers tested positive for anthrax exposure. Spores were found on Stevens' computer keyboard. The biological attack was real, and it was clear that this was just the beginning. Letters of death, a nation under siege. In the days and weeks that followed, the nation watched in horror as more anthrax-laced letters were discovered. High-profile targets included news outlets like NBC and the New York Post, and even Senate offices. The anonymous letters, postmarked from Trenton, New Jersey, contained menacing messages. Death to America, death to Israel. Allah is great. The public response was immediate and intense. People became afraid to open their mail. Postal workers donned gloves and masks. the sight of white powder, whether it was sugar, flour, or just dust, could trigger panic. The U.S. Postal Service introduced new safety measures, including irradiation of mail, at a cost of billions of dollars. As the attacks continued, the death toll rose. In total, 5 people would die from inhalation anthrax, while 17 others were infected but survived. The victims came from all walks of life: postal workers, journalism staff, and even a 94-year-old woman in Connecticut who had no apparent connection to the other cases. The randomness of the attacks heightened the fear. No one knew where the next letter might appear or who might be targeted. This invisible enemy had turned one of the most mundane aspects of daily life, checking the mail, into a potential death sentence. Tom Brokaw, the renowned NBC News anchor, received an anthrax-laced letter at his New York office. His assistant, who opened the letter, contracted cutaneous anthrax, but thankfully survived. The incident brought the reality of the attacks into American living rooms, as one of the most trusted faces in news became a victim. The attacks on Senators Tom Daschle and Patrick Leahy were particularly alarming. On October 15th, a letter addressed to Senator Daschle was opened in his Washington office. The powdery substance inside tested positive for anthrax, leading to the closure of several Senate office buildings. The House of Representatives shut down for the first time in its history, and many government operations ground to a halt. The postal system, the veins through which much of America's communication flowed, became a vector for terror. Postal workers Thomas Morris Jr. and Joseph Cursine, both working at the Brentwood Postal Facility in Washington, D.C., died from inhalation anthrax after being exposed to contaminated letters. Their deaths highlighted the vulnerability of those on the front lines and the indiscriminate nature of the attacks. The hunt for the culprit. Twists, turns, and tragedy. As the attacks unfolded, the FBI launched one of the largest and most complex investigations in its history, codenamed Anthrax. Thousands of agents and postal inspectors interviewed more than 9,000 witnesses, conducted 67 searches, and issued over 6,000 grand jury subpoenas. The investigation would last for years, costing millions of dollars and following countless leads. Initially, many suspected foreign terrorists or state-sponsored actors, given the proximity to September 11th and the anti-American messages in the letters. However, as the investigation progressed, it became clear that the culprit was likely domestic. The anthrax strain was eventually traced to a specific batch from a U.S. Army facility, narrowing the field of suspects to those with access to these secure laboratories. The first major suspect to emerge was Dr. Stephen J. Hatfill, a scientist who had worked at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, USAMRIID. Hatfill found himself under intense scrutiny, his life turned upside down by constant surveillance and media attention. Despite years of investigation, no charges were ever filed against him. In a twist of fate, Hatfill would later successfully sue the government for defamation, receiving a multi-million-dollar settlement. As the Hatfill lead went cold, investigators turned their attention to another USAMRIID scientist, Dr. Bruce E. Ivins. Ivins had worked with anthrax for years and had access to the specific strain used in the attacks. As the FBI closed in, Ivins' behavior became increasingly erratic. Colleagues reported concerns about his mental state, and he began spending long hours alone in the lab. In July 2008, as the FBI prepared to bring charges against him, Bruce Ivins took his own life. His suicide brought a dramatic and controversial end to the investigation. In 2010, the FBI, DOJ, and U.S. Postal Inspection Service formally concluded that Ivins had acted alone in planning and executing the attacks. However, the case against Ivins was not without its critics. Some of his colleagues and independent experts questioned the strength of the evidence. The lack of a trial meant that many aspects of the case remained unresolved, leaving room for doubt and conspiracy theories. The FBI's evidence against Ivins was largely circumstantial but compelling. They pointed to his access to the specific anthrax strain, his unusual lab hours leading up to the attacks, and his history of mental health issues. They also cited his obsession with a sorority that had an office near where some of the letters were mailed. But questions persisted. Could Ivins have produced the highly weaponized anthrax spores alone? Why weren't traces of anthrax found in his car or home? And what about the letters themselves, which some experts said didn't match Ivins' handwriting? The controversy surrounding the investigation underscored the challenges of solving a crime of this nature. The complexity of the scientific evidence, the large pool of potential suspects, and the high stakes involved all contributed to a case that some felt was never truly solved. A nation forever changed. The legacy of the Anthrax attacks. The 2001 Anthrax attacks left an indelible mark on American society. They exposed vulnerabilities in our biodefense systems and mail handling procedures. They demonstrated how a biological agent could be weaponized to create widespread fear and disruption. The attacks also raised troubling questions about the security of high-containment laboratories and the potential for insider threats. In response to the attacks, the government invested billions in biodefense. The BioWatch program was created to provide early detection of biological attacks in major cities. The Strategic National Stockpile was expanded to ensure rapid access to medical countermeasures in the event of a biological attack. The U.S. Postal Service implemented sweeping changes. New mail screening technologies were introduced, and protocols for handling suspicious packages were overhauled. These measures, while necessary, came at a significant cost, both financial and in terms of efficiency. The anthrax attacks also had a profound impact on public health infrastructure. The need for rapid identification and response to biological threats became painfully clear. Laboratories across the country improved their capabilities for detecting dangerous pathogens, and communication channels between health agencies were strengthened. Legislation followed as well: the Public Health Security and Bioterrorism. Preparedness and Response Act of 2002 aimed to improve the nation's ability to prevent, prepare for, and respond to bioterrorism and other public health emergencies. It expanded food inspection programs, increased security for water systems, and tightened controls on biological agents and toxins. But perhaps the most lasting impact was psychological. The anthrax attacks, coming so soon after 9/11, deepened the sense of vulnerability that many Americans felt. The idea that a deadly agent could arrive in your mailbox, hidden in an innocent-looking letter, was terrifying. It changed the way people thought about personal safety and the potential for terrorism in everyday life. As we reflect on the events that began on October 5, 2001, we're confronted with difficult questions. How prepared are we for future bioterrorism threats? What is the balance between scientific research and security? And how do we maintain vigilance without succumbing to paralyzing fear? The anthrax attacks serve as a stark reminder of the ongoing need for vigilance, scientific advancement, and cooperation between agencies and nations to prevent and respond to biological threats. They underscore the importance of robust public health infrastructure and the challenges of responding to unconventional threats in our interconnected world. This is American Shadows, where we peer into the darker corners of our nation's history. Until next time, remember that even in our darkest hours, the resilience of the American spirit shines through. The anthrax attacks tested our nation, but they also spurred advancements in biodefense and emergency response that continue to protect us today. Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep watching American Shadows. For in understanding our past, we gain insights that can help us navigate the complex landscape of our present and future. What are your thoughts on the lasting impact of the anthrax attacks? How do you think they've influenced our current approach to biosecurity and public health? Share your perspectives in the comments below. Your insights add invaluable depth to these difficult but necessary discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most unsettling chapters in recent American history. Until next time, remember that knowledge and vigilance are our best defenses against the shadows that threaten our society.